All right, so welcome to another Ask ANCAP roundtable discussion. We're going to be discussing guardianship and property rights today. We've got some really interesting questions and answers. I'm going to hand it over to Zern, who's going to pose the, I suppose, quandary that we're trying to resolve, and I'll leave it to you guys.
Yep. I guess I'll start briefly. So I have two hypotheticals here, and what my contention is that both hypotheticals require the same consideration. So in hypothetical one, let's imagine that there is three people. Uh, One is a father with his son, and one is a complete stranger. They go out on a trip, let's say hiking up a mountain. At some point, the father gets angry at the kid and says, I no longer want to take care of you. I no longer want to be your guardian. He informs the stranger that he no longer wants to take care of the child and if he wants to take guardianship over him. The stranger responds, no. So, my question is for this specific hypothetical, if the father abandons the child on the mountain, is he liable if the child dies as a result of his abandonment? The second hypothetical is regarding abortion. So, from the evictionist standpoint, is that a mother is not required to lend her body or resources to sustain the life of a child. So, if she also goes through the same process of letting everybody know that, hey, I no longer want to be the guardian of this child, uh, and that there's nobody wants to pay for any artificial wombs, nobody wants to foot the bill, and she decides to evict the child, and the child dies of natural causes. So it's not an abortion per se, it's just removing the fetus and it just dies of natural causes. Is she also not held liable for the death of that child because it she put the fetus in the same position as abandoning the child on the mountain? So those are my two hypotheticals, and the contention between them is there a duty or an obligation, either one to take care of the child until a suitable guardian is available, and the same thing for the child. You would have to hold the baby until term or potentially longer until a suitable guardian is available.
What do you think about that, Doge?
Um, so, specifically about the first hypothetical, um, the father and the child and the stranger, all three go to an isolated mountain, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty far away from civilization. It's a nice mountain hike.
Yeah, so I would say in that situation, the father is uh, guilty because he's forestalling the child from the rest of civilization is first of all isolating him, and it's not enough that there's just this one guy that could potentially be the father. And regarding the second hypothetical, um, you specifically say like no one, no one wants to take care of the child, um, and that is proper notification. Um, so first of all, it's not possible to forestall if no one wants the child, and the mother wouldn't be rela- uh, responsible.
Okay, I guess here to tackle your first response to hypothetical A, it seems to me kind of arbitrary to decide what is the standard on which the forestalling occurs. He provided proper notification to the most recent available person to that's available to take guardianship, and that person responded no. Why is he required to spend any extra resources to take the child back to civilization or to use any of like that seems like a duty that you're saying, well, he needs to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G before he can properly abandon the child. In the case of the mother, she's doing the same thing as well for hypothetical B. Uh, she provided the notice. Now there happens to be more people maybe, but they all said no, and you're not applying the same consideration there. Why doesn't she also have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G until there's a suitable person? Because she's forestalling the development and the potential continuation of this life by aborting the baby and letting, let's say, nature takes its course from the evictionist standpoint. When I say abortion, I don't mean like the act of killing.
Okay, so um, the difference I would say is that um, uh, with the father and the son, uh, I gotta think through this. I've never done a live debate like this, or not really live, but so in the first hypothetical, the father. The difference is that he brings the child into like a place where he couldn't uh, survive by himself, and no one else could um, take up uh, guardianship. So
Well,
it's not.
there is one, and that's the stranger who also said he doesn't want to take guardianship. So you need to tackle as why. What's the standard of saying like, okay, does it need to be 10 people, 15 people, or does it just need to be one party needs to be available to hear your uh, proclamation that you don't want guardianship?
Um, I kind of feel like it would maybe be uh, a problem of uh, like a continuum problem. I wouldn't say it's like one or two people, but if we would say like hypothetically there were two people on Earth, then yeah, it would just be um, these two people. Um, my thinking is that uh, first of all, in the case in the second hypothetical, you bake into the hypothetical that uh, no one at all wants the child. So
Mhm.
and from the outset there, it's not even possible to argue that you're forestalling someone from uh, taking the child. Uh, the only argument there is uh, why is the why is the mother not responsible for the child? Uh, which is it's a different
Well,
question.
I wouldn't say it's different, because the way you describe it, you said that the father's putting the son in the position of where there is maybe not the most adequate amount of maybe people for to take guardianship, right? I would say the mother's putting the child, the fetus, in in the environment in which it will die as a consequence, right? She's putting it in already in a hostile environment, which is nature, which is the same as the sun. The hostile environment is nature. So I'd say that it's exactly, uh, well, they're not the same exactly, but they're very analogous.
Well, presumably, the father would he's taking the child out of civilization, right? The child wasn't in on the mountain or something, or in an isolated place.
Okay.
So uh, the the default state there is leaving the child in civilization, not taking him out and isolating him. So my thinking there is, as a parent, your rights to do whatever with the child is, um, you can do with the child however you please, as long as it doesn't aggress against them, right? It doesn't prevent them from growing up into a functional adult.
Hmm.
So the condition of taking your child to an isolated mountain is that you bring them back safely.
Okay, couldn't I make the same argument for the womb? The natural state in which the child was born in its environment is the womb. You're taking it out of its natural state. Shouldn't you return it back to its natural state inside the womb so that it can continue gestating and you're not going to aggress upon this child? You could put the same argument right back for the mother. I mean, it's if you're basing it on location, right? Then you run into a problem here. What is the right location? If you like, this could happen on a cruise. This could happen if you guys decide to go on a sailboat, right? Just because you're doing an activity and the location happens to be an inhospitable location, where is your justification to say, well, he needs to return him back to civilization? I mean, everybody's born potentially in different environments.
Hmm. Um, the my problem is the justification of, like, well, why is the father allowed to just take a child to the mountain? Like, he couldn't bring any child to the mountain. He could only bring his child. Right.
Because
So,
it's pre-assumed that he is the guardian of that child from the get-go. That's the presumption, and he's saying that he's going to now relinquish his guardianship. So it's in the hypothetical. That's why he's bringing his child. It's because he assumed guardianship, and now he's relinquishing his guardianship. And there's still a stranger there who has heard the decree that he no longer wants to take care of this kid. So it's not. I would agree with you if it was just him and the child. Well, he didn't give an opportunity for anybody else to take guardianship. But in this scenario, there is another person, and they said no.
hmm. uh, I don't know. I guess I haven't thought of it.
So I guess just to push the conversation a little bit, from my perspective, is that both the father and the mother have an obligation uh, to that child, and now we can discuss what that obligation is and to what extent. It kind of becomes hard, but then we're kind of my fear here is the reason why I brought this up is, does it turn into like maybe a positive right, which kind of goes against some of the beliefs of ANCAP. So this is why this um,
I
is a
mean,
problem.
honestly, for me, I, I haven't thought specifically about this situation enough, but uh, my final, um, you know, ruling on stuff like this is the NAP, and, you first common principle. So, from my perspective, um, if you can come up with a hypothetical where um, there's the conclusion is a positive right, like the the child owns the father or his resources, then the conclusion is that the child can be abandoned, right? So I would just bite the bullet and say, yes, the child could be abandoned. Um, I would just have to think more specifically about this situation.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you bite the bullet, so in the case of hypothetical B here, since the mother is using like forethought to remove the baby before, like, let's say viability, let's add that as a standard here. um she is knowingly forestalling the development of the baby by taking it out and basically accepting the consequence of death. And originally, to even come about, like, to even get the baby, right, she also knew the risk of copulation, which would result in that pregnancy. So, like, my contention here again is, how can you violate the forestall the baby in its development and say, well, the baby is not entitled to any property rights or to right to, since you can't even express its will, when the consequences of the woman's action necessarily violates that baby's, like, rights to not be forestalled in continuing development.
What's the question?
uh the question is how can in the case of the abortion or slash evictionism, if she knowingly takes out the child, right, she knows the consequence that it will die, let's say before
Mhm.
viability, so let's say before 24 weeks, right. She takes out that fetus, it's not in the stage of viability with current technology, uh, and she takes it out, she knows the consequence is death. How is that not an aggression? That's like, that would be like me dropping my child off, right, in the middle of the desert, and then be like, well, adios. Would that not be an aggression? Like, are you forestalling like his
Well,
life?
no, I don't accept this insinuation that if you know the consequence of your action is someone's death, then you're aggressing against them. Like I could imagine, I hire some incompetent person, maybe by accident, and they're so incompetent that I'm the only person who will ever hire them, and if I fire them, they would just die. They can't sustain themselves. Um, I don't see it as some legitimate argument to say, okay, now you're positively obligated to sustain them forever, because they would die otherwise, and you know they would die.
Well, so the difference there is that if he was capable of getting a job, number one, it means that he had some reasonable faculties to even try to sustain his own life. So in that scenario, I wouldn't agree with your hypothetical there. The difference is the baby does not have the ability to express its will, while the employee obviously was able to clearly ask for an employment. So that means he had some reasonable faculties to sustain his own life by pursuing some type of value. The baby doesn't have that capability, as in to say that it cannot express it.
So, well, why does that matter? Why does that mean that now, uh, the is your argument that he actually is competent? He actually could live.
Well,
Maybe
because your
he's
priest,
retarded.
sure, he can be retarded, but in the scenario you provided, is that he is like, you hired him, he's looking for a job. That means he has some kind of faculty to understand that he needs a job to live. Otherwise, then he would just, why would he even look for a job in the first place? It's kind of weird.
Well, could a starving child not look for food?
A starving child could look for food, but then hypothetical B is, can this child express its will, or can it act and to attain some value? So the mother can't just abort the baby, number one, because we if we both agree that, well, I don't think you agree that you said you would bite the bullet, but if that's forestalling, and then if the baby is born, it can't seek out, it doesn't have the faculties to seek out like its own self-sustainment to some extent, right? It can't do that yet. maybe when it's maybe at the age of 5 or 7. But I kind of want to go back to the original point here, is that if you're biting the bullet for hypothetical A, that means you're okay with also hypothetical B, and then maybe hypothetical C, where you just drop off the kid in the middle of nowhere. Because I would say hypothetical C is similar to hypothetical B.
Why? What?
Because okay, so hypothetical B is the eviction, right? And so let's say I take my kid, let's say I'm the mother, and I drop my kid off in the middle of nowhere where they will, and I know that they're gonna die because it's an inhospitable environment. What's the difference between hypothetical B, right, and hypothetical C, where I just drop off my random kid who's the age of, let's say, 7 in the middle of the desert? What's the difference? I'm putting them in a situation where they're gonna die.
Well, the difference is notification. You have to notify. You actually have to, you can't abandon something by just not using it, but projecting outwards that you're still excluding it, right? You can't maintain a border around a property and say, actually that property it's up for grabs, anyone can take it. Actually, you wouldn't even say it, you just believe it, right? Like you would just imagine in your head that if someone were to go around the fence, then you wouldn't stop them. That's not actually proper abandonment. So you're forestalling.
Okay, so why is that not the same case for the mother? Go ahead, Zitik, if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, so who is being forestalled if you don't notify?
Other potential guardians.
So all the potential guardians in that case, that would imply that they all have some property right over the guardianship of this child collectively. That would be the position there.
No, the first person to try to claim that child.
Nobody, because
So by guardians, I mean well, there are many potential people, but obviously only one could.
Sure, and if
yeah,
that,
but they don't know about it yet because you haven't notified them.
Correct. That's why it's illegitimate abandonment. You haven't actually abandoned the child, and if you haven't abandoned the child, then you're just aggressing against them.
You're aggressing against whom specifically?
The child.
The child. Okay, so you're forestalling the child.
By neglecting the child.
Okay, so
Yes.
the child is the one you're forestalling. It's not potential guardians.
Well, you could aggress against two people.
Okay. I mean, I don't.
Okay, let me clarify. On one hand, so if you have a child and you're just imagining in your head, the next person to grab that child is the parent. Now, I'm not actually his parent, but outwards, everyone thinks you're the parent, right? You keep him in your house and stuff like that. But while doing this, at the same time, you're neglecting him. You don't feed him, or you take him to a random mountain and live and drop him off. So you're aggressing against the child by neglecting him, but you're also forestalling anyone who would want to come and take care of the child.
But you don't know that. You don't know that yet. You don't know who wants it or not before you tell them. So you can't. So nobody can sue you for something that's can't be known, you know?
Sure.
So
Why does that
So
matter?
I don't see how like it's fair that you're forestalling a child. I just can't see how you're forestalling someone else.
so 1 second, I just want to go back to Doge's argument here. But why wouldn't this also apply with the mother? If nobody wants to take care of this kid and she notified, right? If you agree both it's forestalling potential suitors who for guardianship and forestalling the child, why is this not the case where she's forestalling the child necessarily from continuing developing and like living? Because you just acknowledged that both you could forestall individuals and the child. In the case of the scenario where nobody wants to take guardianship or like pay up to take this baby out the womb, and she takes it out, she's putting it in direct danger of the environment, and though she's forestalling that life.
No, because she doesn't claim the guardianship anymore, and she properly abandoned it.
So how is that again? I mean, I feel like so it so you bit the bullet for hypothetical A, right? So you would say that it's fine to
Well,
put the problem is you're putting the child in a precarious situation. Even if there was a notification, right? The idea of putting the child in a precarious situation doesn't like necessitate that, oh well, that it's just for you to put that child in. Like, okay, so let's say I did the same thing in hypothetical A. I let the other people know, and then nobody comes to the rescue. Doesn't my action have a direct consequence of leading to the death of the child by putting them in this precarious situation?
by evicting the child.
Yeah, because it's not its
But-
natural state, right? I mean, previously you acknowledged that you would have, well, you bit the bullet after that, but wouldn't it be proper to say that, well, you would have to wait until somebody suitable is able to take guardianship of this child? Otherwise, by you putting this child in this precarious situation when there is no other suitors, you're still the guardian, then you probably haven't abandoned the child yet because nobody else picked it up.
Well, abandonment doesn't require
Sorry,
someone else.
specifically guardianship. You haven't transferred guardianship.
No, abandonment doesn't require subsequent homesteading. So I don't accept that. I don't see why I should.
Okay.
I actually never said. I don't think I've ever said here that it's required for someone else to homestead the guardianship immediately afterwards.
Sure, but so we are not acknowledging that an action that leads directly to the cause of death of a child is not an aggression, you would say?
Sorry again.
The action of abandonment and putting the child in an inhospitable environment, right? When you did have guardianship over it, right? Putting that child in a precarious situation where the consequence is death, is that not an
Mhm.
aggression upon this child?
No, not necessarily.
How so? Can you provide me like a hypothetical where that wouldn't be the case?
Sure. A mother evicting the child and no one wants to take care of the child.
Yeah, but okay, the
So,
eviction though necessarily leads to the child's death. How is that not a direct action of the mother knowing by doing so it will
well,
kill the child? What's the difference between her stabbing her stomach and killing the child? Well, there is a difference. Sorry, 'cause that's a direct aggression. What what I'm arguing is that both would be the same thing because you're doing an action that necessarily leads to death. So if she were to stab her own stomach, right, it's her body, she has the right over it, and if that leads to the death of the child, why is that What's wrong with that?
because she doesn't have a right to kill the child. She has a right to evict him.
Yeah, but you're kind of obfuscating here by saying evict. I'm saying that her
No.
action leads directly to the death of the child by eviction. The means of killing is not a knife, but eviction itself is the means in which she's using to kill this baby.
Well, no. What kills the child is nature, not you not taking care of it.
Well, it's not, well, if it's nature, right, in the sense of it was naturally in her womb and it would have survived. You then took an action that removed it from its natural environment, which led it to die.
I feel like that's just playing with the word nature. What I mean by what kills the child is nature is you aren't killing the child. The child dies by natural processes. Um, like uh, the child dies by I don't know, not being able to breathe, or it's not, you aren't choking the child, you aren't stabbing the child.
Well,
That's what I mean.
okay, how are you distinguishing natural process? Like, I could say, well, if you're stabbed, you didn't really die from the stabbing, you really died from the blood loss, right? But the means in which caused the death is me stabbing you, right? The reason why you actually, quote unquote, died is blood loss. That's a natural process of death when you have a wound, right? But you wouldn't say that for that case, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense. It would be kind of like weird to say that. You would say, well, the means in which caused the wound is the thing that led to the death. So the same thing for eviction. Eviction is the means in which this person used to cause the death.
Well, with a functional human, uh, you actually, by stabbing, you actually stop. You intervene, right? You intervene with this natural uh, process. You aren't just letting it
I agree.
go forward.
You are intervening with the natural process, which is gestation inside the womb.
Uh,
That's my
Yeah,
point.
I mean, like the child is in a state of natural guardianship. That is the state of nature that it comes from, and this is where like I think G's position comes in. So like, in order to properly evict, you'd have to have someone to evict to, specifically. Otherwise, you're forestalling. Or yeah.
well, it's possible that someone would want to homestead guardianship, and by taking a child out of the womb, it's very likely he would die, at least with current technology anyway, right? Even if you would really, really want to take care of the child, you would try your best. He will probably die anyway. So,
Sure, but you see the difference there is intention. Your intention is not the forethought that you know it's going to die. Your intention is to maintain the life. That's clearly different. And in the case of where nobody wants to take guardianship, the mother necessarily knows that this child will die without a doubt, right? The intention is different here. So it must go back that she must hold the child until a suitable guardian is available to transfer to. That would be my position as well.
Cool. It's like if you're in a plane, right? You're starting from the ground, so you can't just evict while you're flying. You have to wait until you land and then evict. I think the same principle applies to like guardianship or someone being pregnant.
Which would go back to hypothetical A, right? Which means that you actually can't bite the bullet on that because you would have to go back to civilization, right? To provide the child means. So that would be like the airplane example. So then you're caught in like this problem here where hypothetical A and B both need that. You have to return them back to guardianship. You have to like provide that, and you can't abandon it until so.
Either the child guards itself, like that's the one way to do it, or you guard, yeah, and you have to continue guarding it to that point, basically. Yeah, if there's no one else around or nobody wants to, or you can also just sit there and die, because then you're not even providing for yourself. I'm yeah, I did talk with G about this. It made more sense when I talked with him, but yeah. Here's a paper soon.
I would love to see that paper, because I feel like I've come to the same conclusion where I don't think you can either evict the child knowing that it will die. You have to meet certain criteria of either it being like this child has displayed the capability of self-sufficiency and by some standard. Now, what that standard is, I don't know.
Like I think in this example is just the child is running away. Like it's starting providing for itself, starting going, just not needing the mother. You know.
Hello, Fuelonomics is going to join us at this juncture in the conversation. Fuel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Great.
So I get the impression you're familiar with where the conversation is at and where we started. And I really want to find out right off the bat, are you more in the evictionist camp or more skeptical of evictionism?
I am into the evictionist camp. I am in favor of the possibility for the woman to decide whether to keep the baby or, expel it without that causing the child to die, possibly. So maybe more departurist.
Sure. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions before I put it back out to the open table here. So, in your mind, I want to ask you a question, and it's this. What distinguishes between killing somebody outright?
Yeah.
So that would be like, let's just say we can understand it like shooting somebody. And abandoning someone to certain death due to environmental elements, let's say. So what distinguishes these two things for you?
For me, when it comes to killing, there must be a direct action that is logically and it can be linked with evidence to the directly to the death of the victim. Sorry for the pronunciation. And meanwhile, abandoning someone might just mean neglecting your responsibilities as a guardian or as a owner when it doesn't come to actual life involved. No, not human life, but animals maybe. But that doesn't mean that you're killing the individual, just that you're leaving him to alone, to himself, to help himself.
So just to be clear, if you were to be, now you can think of this as a child, like a toddler who needs food, or maybe it's just an injured person who needs medicine. But in either case, not giving them the thing that they need to survive would not constitute a direct action. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So it's rather, so there's a distinction between a direct action and the absence of an action. I know that praxeologically speaking, not acting is also acting, at least in praxeological terms, they're equivalent. But we're seeing a distinction here where not helping somebody is distinct. So I wonder, like for Zern, I think it's fair to say that you're suggesting that this link is actually there, that not providing somebody with something that they need to survive is a direct action that leads to their death. Is that fair?
No, I don't think it's not exactly. So what I would say is that there's two elements, if I'm maybe there might be more, but the two elements that come off to the top of my head is one, like forethought, right? And the second one would be uh yeah, the direct action. So for example, the action of abandoning someone, right, means that they were in your care. That's a direct action. You clearly knew, you had forethought of that, what would this action lead to. The difference is where, let's say, somebody's dying on the road, right? I don't think you're obligated because you're not the one who created the environment for this to happen. So you're not obligated to provide anything for this person because it wasn't your doing. You weren't the lead cause for this thing happening. That would be the distinction.
So if you and I'm just trying to make sure I'm being clear here. So if you were to stab somebody for no reason at all, then you would be obligated to provide them with whatever medical care you were able to render. But if somebody was attacking you and that was the reason that they ended up getting stabbed by you, you wouldn't be obligated to render medical care to them in that case. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that again? I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Sure. So if you were to so you use the example of coming across somebody on the road. So if you come across somebody, let's say you are the one that stabbed them, and I'm specifically
Okay.
drawing attention to that because you said something along the lines of you didn't create this circumstance. So I'm sort of picking up on that, and I'm saying, so if you stab somebody for no reason at all, you're creating that circumstance, and that means that you would be like, let's say you stab them, and then you change your mind, like, oh God, I'm so sorry. You're obligated to do everything you can to render medical care to them. But if the reason that they got stabbed was something else, like for example, they attacked you first, in that case, you're not obligated to render medical aid. Is that your position?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone else at this point?
I'm wondering how this maybe relates to let's when you're sorry well if a woman gets you know, I don't know, so sure I can say the word. Can I say the word? There.
Graped. Okay, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm wondering if your position is that she is allowed to abandon the child if she's raped, but not if raped or but not if she's not.
So that's an interesting one. So yeah, so the forethought is not there because that wasn't her intent for copulation. That was forced upon her. Now I guess my position wouldn't be like that. It's either or. Wait, is it either or? I think it might be like an and or. So the child is innocent in this scenario because it's not the cause of the grape. It's just a consequence of it. So yeah, I think you would have to look at it in a slightly different way. Um, for the child, because there's another individual now, that would be a different case where you would look at the forethought of the mother and the direct action that she takes. Whereas for the rapist, this person would need to be punished himself. I don't understand. I don't see the connection between the graper and correlating that also to punishment of the another individual makes kind of no sense to me in a sense.
I mean, yeah, if we can, I mean, to fully visualize this kind of situation, it would be like punishing the son of an enslaver because of his father enslaving the you know because of
Yeah.
I think this is
yeah
inconsistent.
yeah
Kind of like, I think the reason, like, we think the mother has to like provide for the child. I don't think the reason is that she willingly had sex. I think the reason is the fact that the baby comes from a state of guardianship. Like maybe you could argue the rapist has to provide resources to help with raising the child.
Sure, that would be like restitution and punishment, which I'm fine with. I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah, but I don't think this means you can just abandon the child.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, just because the child is an individual now, it's like it's not like the rapist and the child are like like a collective here where you can punish both of
Yeah.
them for something. They're two individuals, so I don't think you could apply that. Oh, just because she didn't consent to the consequence, that this innocent person who also has property rights is now liable for the sins of the father. Like that would be the kind of phrase that you would use here.
Yeah. We agree.
I think I want to sort of put it back towards Doge and Fuel here because, if it's okay with you guys, I totally agree with the validity of using this first hypothetical about abandoning the child on the mountain to sort of evaluate something about the abortion topic. But I'm really interested in just homing in on the first hypothetical in a bubble for a moment and working out some of the details there first. And specifically, I'm interested in this idea that, I'm envisioning it all kinds of different ways. You're on like a buggy and you drop somebody in the middle of the desert and drive away. Or, like you said, I think we've been talking about just being on a hike on a mountain. I think you can also imagine dropping someone into the ocean too, might be as equally valid condition. And I'm wondering about how, if you, from the point of view of property rights, obviously the NAP proprietarian sort of, I think that's a pejorative, usually proprietarian, but the property rights point of view is that, okay, well, this person I'm with, they're on my buggy and I don't want them on the buggy anymore. So I wonder if we can start not at guardianship, but just sort of evaluate the normal conditions first and then work our way from two adults to an adult and somebody they have guardianship over and sort of work our way back that way and do that in order to keep everything super crystal clear and flowing. So Doge and Fuel, if I'm right that you guys are sort of on the same page, what is your take on this scenario? So there's a car or a vehicle of some kind in the middle of the desert, and there's two adults. And the owner of the car, who is also the driver of the car, says, I don't want you on my property anymore. And they just kick them out into the middle of the desert. And let's say that the nature of this desert is such that being out there on foot is essentially certain death. There's no way to walk from where they are and survive. So
I mean, sorry.
no, I think that basically summarizes the whole situation. So let's just start there. So what is your sort of prescription or evaluation of that scenario?
I mean, if the owner of the buggy uses proportional force, and not an high, overly aggressive approach in order to evict the other person from their property, in this case the buggy, I think that would be valid, especially considering the circumstances. If the other person actually, I mean, in order to actually have the conditions for this to happen, you must have a cause to make such drastic decision. If the other person was, let's say, being overly annoying to the point of actual mental frustration, but neglecting the fact that they're surrounded by actual desert and on another person's property, especially considering that the other person owns the buggy, it's on them. Like, it's lack of situational awareness and lack of judgment. Sorry for the stuttering. I sometimes have it even in Italian. Anyway, I think that such actions don't really constitute something that would be considered murder. I know it's kind of a strong opinion to have in this case because those are direct actions that lead to somebody's death.
Am
But
I sort of characterizing what you're saying accurately when I say this? Because I think this is what I was understanding, is that I heard you say that it's such an unusual situation to find yourself in that if you're getting evicted from somebody's car in the middle of the desert, you must have done something to warrant that eviction. Is that something you mentioned?
yeah, but if that's not the case, I mean, you you really must trust the other person when you're doing such thing, because if you're going with a psychopath that it's your first time actually hanging around with, that's not going to be a very intelligent thing to do to do such thing, to even start such travel. But anyway, let's say that the whole context starts on the buggy in the desert, and the person could actually be proven to have been taken such action out of the blue, and taking that decision out of the blue, and just left the other person to die out of nowhere with no reason, somehow. I mean, if somebody finds out about something like that, just like for the other scenario that we discussed earlier with the child, or with the 5 years old non-autonomous child left out in the mountains to die by the father who doesn't want to be the guardian no more. If the victim of the action, if the perpetrator, sorry, is actually found guilty of such action without any justification by anybody, really, I mean, that would, of course, result in nothing but an absolute. I don't know if I can say it, but well, okay, social ostracism, and crap smearing campaigns towards the perpetrator, because that's a psychopath thing to do. Of course, if somebody finds out, there's gonna be consequences. But once again, if you're going on such trip with somebody that you don't trust, or you don't have the best relationship with, or you just create that scenario by acting up and not considering what kind of things you're risking by doing that, I think that at that point, you're gonna have to help yourself, or get what is coming for you.
That makes I think that's clear enough. Doge, before I move on, do you agree with that position, or do you think that that represents sort of a divergence from where you're at?
I think, well, it kind of felt like apologetics. Um, I'm not really concerned with like justifying, or rather giving this rationalist approach of thinking like, well, if you get yourself in a situation where you fuck up, then you must have done this or that, or stuff like this. Um, my thinking here is, what if it isn't the desert, right? What if it's something way less extreme? What if I get my friend to drive me my friend and I take a trip to a city nearby, and while we're there, I piss him off somehow, and he's like, "Well, fuck you! I'm leaving you here. Uh, get home yourself." Am I allowed to now take compensation by force for like a boss or something?
Oh, that's a really interesting framing. And I guess is it worth adding to just point out that being in like an unfamiliar city, you are definitely potentially there's a non-zero chance of death, I suppose. Um,
Yeah,
I want to answer
but
that. Oh, sorry.
my my what I'm stressing here is the framing of property is what's essential here. Who owes what uh, to whom, right? So when we're talking about death and such extreme scenarios, it's more difficult to talk about um, who owns what, because well, it's if someone dies, then it's a little more complicated to say who owns his body and stuff like this. But fundamentally, it's the same exact idea. I think it's completely analogous, and uh, I think by their conclusion, you could sue your friend for the bus fare or whatever, or if and you're right, if anything bad happens to me in that city, uh, where my friend isn't there to protect me, like do I just go into like this unconditional contract with anyone who gives me a ride that I would return home safely?
Right. I think that is a really good elaboration on the original hypothetical there. I want to ask Zern, am I correct in suspecting that your reaction to this hypothetical I have on screen here, situation A, let's call it,
Mhm.
is it? Am I correct that you would say this is not permissible because to leave the person in the desert, and we can move on to the urban environment second that Doge was mentioning, but is it your take on this that because leaving this person in the desert means certain death, that it is not permissible legally?
So I'll expound on this. So I think there's two things that are going on here. By the If you got in a ride from this person who lives in the desert, they know the environment in which they're riding to, and I'm assuming that they obviously explained to you where you're going, right? And by you agreeing, I think there's like also an implicit agreement that he's taking to an environment which is potentially inhospitable. So you might either know the risk. So then, if you know the risk, then this person is not responsible because you're aware of the risk, right? But let's say in the scenario where this person hasn't informed you of where you're going, right? I think then they're obligated for sure to at least return you to the original position in which you were in.
That's really interesting. So, like, if it actually matters, I couldn't just be like hop in and not mention the desert. If I don't tell them we're going to the desert and then I evict him in the middle of it, that would be impermissible. But if I said, "Hey, we're going on a friendly ride to the desert," and then I evicted him, it would be okay.
I think that would be okay because you're aware of the risks of what it means to be in the desert, right? And the second reason why it would be permissible, even though let's say you did know the risk, I think there's like an equal and proportional response to certain actions. So if this person just made you mad, right, that is not sufficient enough to leave them in an environment where they're going to die. However, if this person like aggressed on you, let's say decided to punch you in the face, right, I think it's completely fine if you want to throw them outside and let them die because they took the risk knowing that punching you could lead to death as well. Is it likely or unlikely? That doesn't matter. From your perspective, that was an aggression that could have killed you. So then they're accepting the consequences of that. So there's also like an opposite and equal reaction to something. So yeah, that would be my position on this.
Great. Those are two very concrete considerations to make about this. So Doge and Zatidik, I don't mean to exclude you on this one, but not calling you out. I just don't know exactly where you fall on this yet. So I want to get this from Doge first. Um, Doge, so what do you think about these two different things, each on their own, and how they fit into your theory of property rights?
Let me see. I'm just reading it again. Okay, so regarding the second one, if you punch the driver or something, so on an airplane, if you punch the pilot or the crew, could they throw you off, or maybe a helicopter because that's open?
So to respond to that, the question is it a threat and that it's threatening the life of, let's say they punch the pilot? Yeah, I would say that's a threat to the entire crew and your life, because you could knock out this pilot, and or if you punch this person, they could fall off the airplane. So they're accepting some type of major risk uh, based on their consequence. So I think you could punch them, subdue them if you can, but if that's not the case and this person's fighting back, 100% you can go ahead and Spartan kick them off the helicopter if you want. I don't care.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that. I'm trying to think how it actually fits in with your framework, because well,
Well, it seems, if I can jump in here, it seems to be, and I'm not 100% about this, but it seems to be conflating two different aspects of property rights because, like, for example, the entire meaning of seeking restitution is sort of like this, is what I understand it. So if somebody takes an apple from you and then they eat it, well, you can't get the apple back. So there's a sense in which you become the owner of whatever you're going to take for restitution. So if the apple costs $1, then what they've done means that you're justified in taking $1 back from them. And that's sort of a direct causal relationship between the initiation of a mutually exclusive use for something that's owned and the transfer of ownership that comes as a consequence of that. And that, to me, I think that's fairly basic, probably for all four of us.
I would agree.
But I'm sort of, I don't know that I'm struggling with this, but what I'm interested in is when we're talking about what the prompt for the eviction was. So you're driving a car
Mhm.
and you decide you're going to kick somebody out. Now, if they hit you, this is agreeable to all four of us. I'm sure it is, because they're initiating aggression against you in this case. So evicting them is a very logically coherent implication that comes from that. You know, step one, they've initiated this mutually exclusive use of your body, and you're defending yourself. You're, by getting them out of the car, you're putting an end to that. What I'm curious about is, it seems to be that the implication, at least as this is formulated, is that absent any such aggression, there's not a justification for kicking them out of the vehicle. So that sort of seems like, if you take aggression out of it, the default situation is that you can't remove passengers out of your car. What do you think about that?
Um,
I can answer
Can-
this. ZTK, if you want to go on this, I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're evicting him to a certain death, it would be the same as if you were in a normal situation and you just had a gun and shoot him. I mean, maybe that's fair. If someone is punching you, you can at least. Yeah, the thing is, you can flash your gun first, right? Right. at least you can threaten eviction. I'm not like completely sure, but you could, if you can shoot the person immediately after he has punched you, then you can also evict him. That's my position. Like, it's not entirely clear on my side.
Well,
So
that
I
seems to be the real core of it, though, right? Because what we're saying is, and this is, I think this is like the language thing that I'm trying to resolve, is in an aggressive situation where you're defending yourself, then that sort of irons out all the complications, because now that you're being aggressed against in the first place, shooting somebody is not a contentious outcome. The question is kicking somebody out of the car the same as shooting them? I think that is actually what the core disagreement is.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of not 100% sure on that myself, because when we talk about this language that we got into earlier about, well, it's not you that's killing them, it's nature that's killing them. And I think that Zern, I kind of leaned towards Zern when he said, well, that's just sort of a difficult thing to tie down, because is it the bleeding to death or the knife wound? And I would say there's other ways that you could do that. I mean, you could say, like, okay, well, if you're driving fast and you kick somebody out of your car, is it like the pavement that kills them? Or is it, like, what if you kick them out of your car without even touching them? You just say, I say, hey, Zern, like, you're defeating me in this argument and I don't like it. So you have to just get out of my car now. And Zern says, I respect your property rights, so I will do this. And he just leaps out of the car on his own, because he understood that he was being trespassed off of my property. And so I find it sort of difficult to tie that down. And the shooting thing, I think that is the disagreement, is evicting somebody from your property. So saying, I'm excluding you from this now, even though excluding you from this is likely to bring about your death. Is that the same as doing something which violates the property rights that you're being excluded from? So let me phrase that one other way before I put it back. Maybe I'll see if Doge thinks that I'm at least being coherent, and we'll see if we can go from there. But if I shoot you, then I'm violating your property rights because I'm excluded from controlling your body. And when I shoot you, I'm violating that exclusion. I'm saying, no, I've decided that you need a 12 gauge size shotgun slug in your chest right now. That's the violation. And that's why this is an aggressive, violent, murderous act. But when I kick you out of my car, whether it's in the desert or speeding down the highway or parked in a orphanage, I don't see the same dynamic there, and I might be missing it. But what I'm seeing is, I'm saying, hey, like, what's happening is restricted to, I have the right to exclude you from this car, and that's all I'm doing. And the other consequences are not my doing. They're just the result that comes about from you being justifiably excluded from this thing that I own. Am I making sense with that sort of framing?
Yeah, I mean, I have a kind of clarification that I would maybe add to this, but if Doge wants to answer first, that's fine with me.
Yeah, so fundamentally, my concern with all of this is who owns what. In the case of the car, who owns the car? Who owns the airplane? When I try to kick out my friend for my car, you both recognize that it's not only unethical, it's illegal. I actually can't legally do it. So can he whip out a gun and tell me, you drive or I shoot you? Or not shoot, but like, I will take control of this car if you don't continue to drive me home. Can I do it?
That's an interesting, that's an interesting scenario. I have to think about it, but I'll let Zitik answer first regarding, since he said he wants to say something.
Yes, it was. I think I'm disagreeing on that. I don't think you can immediately. I think you have to have some kind of proportionality. Like, if someone is punching you, you don't immediately have a right to shoot them. I think. I think the first step is showing that you have a gun. Like if they still
Yeah, yeah,
continue there, you
yeah.
can't
That's
shoot
why
them.
I took back the shooting. I mean,
And
what I
I
meant
would
is
say the same.
I threaten you. I'm like, uh, okay, you're about to kick me out. I will actually make sure that you don't. I whip out a gun. I say, um, drive me now. And I have a right to be driven home safely, or to a safe place in general. Um,
Oh, that's okay. That's a different thing. Yeah, that's interesting too. But uh, yeah, I think the same thing is if someone is punishing you, like or trying to punish you in a car when you're driving them, you can at least first threaten them with evicting them. Maybe I don't have an argument as to why there's. I mean, the thing is that they're gonna die, right? If that's the assumption, if you just
mhm,
leave them in the
yes.
distress.
Yep.
So I think it's the same. Like if you're shooting them, both of them leads to death in that case. Um, so yeah, you can threaten with eviction. If he stops, then I suppose you can drive him home. If he doesn't, then you can just evict him. That's at least my position. I
Yeah.
can
Well,
change, I suppose, but yeah.
I would resolve this weird thing, but by saying, well, if it's an airplane, I have no idea how to operate the airplane, so I need you to uh, fly me home. So if you in the middle of the flight tell me, um, actually for no reason at all, uh, I want you off. Um, so uh, uh, yeah, so like I'm framing it around property is my point. Like by saying that you need to um, get me home safe, or whatever. It's not just an ethical claim; it's a legal claim, and then the question becomes: can I exclude you from your airplane or car?
Right, you're talking about. Oh, sorry. I mean, I guess Soren's can speak now. Yeah, I'm just retired.
Galzar, can you go up a little bit so I can see that original? Okay. Go back down a little bit. I just want to make sure that I'm okay. So just to let's make it clear here. So in the scenario, the things I wanted to clarify was in the example that Galzar gave, where you're driving, right, and you're going to, let's say, on the highway or whatever it is. Can you exclude somebody from your property? I would say I agree. Yes, you can exclude somebody from your property. However, we have a kind of like I guess kind of goes back to the gentleness principle, right? There's the least evasive means. Just because you can exclude somebody doesn't mean that you're allowed to aggress upon them, right? So, for example, if I'm in my house, I invite you in, doesn't give me the right to go ahead and grab you by your neck and toss you out of my house, right? I would first,
Mm.
this is what ZT was talking about. I would first, hey, I want you to leave. And if you refuse, that I could take you, that I can go ahead and use force to take you out. Now, in the scenario, if let's say you're in a moving car, this becomes a little bit weird, right? Because your action, right, is going to lead directly to their death by excluding them. That's not the least peaceful means or gentle means that you're using. The right thing to do was simply just you stop and you take them out. That's in the scenario if there's like nothing certain death about the environment. If there is certain death about this environment, like let's say you're on an airplane, I would say yeah, you would need to land a plane and have this person exit. I don't think you could like kick them out, especially since they haven't aggressed on you, right? They haven't actually committed any aggressive action on you. So you would have to use equal force to proceed that way. You still own it, right? Nobody's saying that you don't own it. You still are the rightful owner. And I don't think him pulling out a gun to say, hey, take me home, that's an initiation of aggression. That is no longer a conversation anymore. That's it. That it's dissolved. You don't have to, because they're threatening your life at that point.
Let me ask you a follow-up question,
Okay.
if I may. If you're like you're saying you're invoking the gentleness principle. So the idea is that you are still allowed to exclude them from your car, but since there's a way to do that available to you where they're not harmed, you're unjustified in doing it the way that causes harm. So my question is, and I just want to sort of poke at the gentleness principle. If you're going to, I assume this one's easy, but if you need to get to like a medical appointment or you're going to die, then I assume that that changes the gentleness principle and you would be able to evict them out of the car for whatever reason. Like if you slow down to let them out, that would be enough of a delay that it causes you to miss the appointment. In that case, you would be justified in throwing them out of the moving vehicle.
That is interesting. Let me think about this for a second. In the scenario where you are seeking medical attention that is life-saving, and you necessarily need to kick this person out to reach your appointment, there is no gentle means. Can you do so?
I'm kind of leaning on Stillmaning Zern's argument here by saying, give a ridiculous hypothetical, you'll get a ridiculous answer. Just thinking, like, how is it even possible that slowing down will risk my life, but stopping completely to, or I guess, actually would say just throw them out when you're still driving?
Yeah, well, the hypothetical was that my life-saving medical intervention is
Time
time
dependent.
sensitive. Yeah,
Yeah.
time sensitive. And the
Okay.
gentleness principle is not time neutral. So if I'm going to let him out of the car without harming him, that's going to cost me time. And and the hypothetical question is that's a sufficient amount of time that I miss the medical intervention.
And you die. Certain death after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I was posing this one in the hopes that we were going to move past it quickly. Not that it was going to be like a trick question or anything like that. I was hoping we'd all just agree, or otherwise, or disagree, maybe, with the idea that this is permissible.
I'm not sure I see the full context. Here.
It's kind of describing a lifeboat scenario. Can you?
Like, how did we get there?
Yeah.
How did this sick person get in this car? That's
Yeah, it
the
is kind
classic-
of it's an ethical cold open. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we just need to like establish some kind of start to it because I'm not seeing the full context.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's my car and it's my friend, and I'm under the impression that we don't need to offer an explanation for why we're kicking somebody out of our property. I was under the impression that for most of us, or at least for one of the other people here, that if you can't exclude people from it, then you don't own it, was sort of the natural. So I typed a question up there in the top right, and this is why. So like can we refuse to sell somebody life-saving medicine that they need, that I own? Let's say I own a pharmacy, and can I just arbitrarily not sell the life-saving medicine to people? With
can.
and keep that reason independent. So maybe I just heard a song I don't like. Maybe I'm a racist. Maybe I'm choosing each person with a dice roll. I want to try to see if we can make it like irrelevant what the reason is.
The thing is like what were the conditions verbally declared or non-verbally declared for the trip, right?
Okay, so maybe I can come up with a weird kind of hypothetical. let's say my friend and I are on a very weak, like 50cc motorcycle. It's barely keeping on, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a rock hits my chest, right? And I need dire emergency care. Um, and this motorcycle is so weak that just like 60, 70 kilograms of extra weight for my friend is slowing it down significantly. So I decide to just throw him off and speed to the hospital. Am I allowed to do it?
You were the passenger of that motorcycle initially, or were you the driver?
No, I'm the rider.
Okay, but what was the conditions when you started? Like you were gonna go back, right? Get back to the home.
I think we can
Or what-
simplify this. I think this is exactly like the lifeboat scenario. You have a boat, two people are on an island, you own the boat. Let's say there's some type of famine that occurs on the island, there's no food, only one person can be on the boat. Let's say the other guy's boat capsized or whatever. And only one person can get on the boat and get back to civilization. Who has does the person who does not own the boat have the right to save his own life, or does the person who owns the boat can exclude that person from that boat? I would say for the first scenario for Galazar, can you refuse medicine? Yes, you can, because uh, it wasn't in the, like, it's not, you're not required to sell anything. That's your prerogative. And then for the boat example, I would say if you're on the boat or in the car and to slow down, I don't know if you can violate that person's uh, property right by kicking them out. I don't know if that's the case. Because you're using an aggressive means to kick them out. It's not.
So you'd
So,
say
now, I just want to say at this point, we've got 3 different hypotheticals, or maybe even more than 3, floating around.
definitely more.
My point was not to put a hypothetical out there. My point was to simplify this entire method of utilizing hypotheticals by saying, like, so what Zatidik is saying is like, how did we get here? And I think Doge said the same thing. And what I'm trying to figure out, first of all, before we evaluate the hypotheticals as such, I want to find out, is it the case or not that your reason is going to be a logically relevant component of this? So, like, for example, with Zern, you said with the medicine example that it's not. Now, I wasn't doing that because I'm trying to explore every conceivable hypothetical. I'm trying to find out, is this a rule? So, as a rule, you're saying, like, if somebody comes into my store, they need the let's say insulin, just to make this simple. They need the insulin, and I just say, nah, I just, it could be because this person's murdered my whole family in the past. It could be just because I'm curious about what it would look like if I let somebody die on like the middle of my shop. It doesn't matter. So it sounds like, just as a rule, you can exclude them from your property.
I see.
And what's kind of invoking what that invokes for me is that when they're dying of their whatever it is that they are dying of, that's not you killing them because you were justified in excluding them from the medicine.
Mhm.
And so, like, to use language that we invoked earlier in the conversation, it was nature that killed them. It wasn't you.
Yep.
And so for me, this sort of gives us all the ingredients, or so it seems, to answer these other hypotheticals, because I think the purpose of a hypothetical should be to establish something concrete about the rules, not to just solve the hypothetical, but after the solution's found, be no more clear on what the rules are.
I
So,
agree with you.
so if that's the case, then if you can, like, if the person dying from the lack of the medicine was nature, um being, it was nature and not you, and you were justified in doing it regardless of what your was, then at least for Zern and I, for all future hypotheticals, we're not going to need to ask what was your reason for doing it. And so if you're out in the middle of the desert and you're in a buggy and let's say you're looking for flowers, and I'm only adding these details not to complicate the hypothetical, but rather just to simplify like what part we're focusing on and what part's not relevant. So for whatever reason, here, Zern, how about I kill you? Okay, so you'll be my passenger, I'll be the driver of the buggy.
Okay.
We're hunting for flowers, and I want to say, I'm sorry for being so pedantic here, everybody, but it doesn't matter what the reason for us being there is, from my point of view, at least for me and Zern, because we've agreed to that. I'm only including this detail so that the hypothetical is easy to imagine and we can focus on the important part. So we're out there hunting for flowers, and you step out of the buggy willingly in the middle of a sand dune because you're going to go, you got a little brush and you're going to see if there's a flower there. Now you turn around and you're going to get back in, and I say, I've decided that I'm excluding you from this buggy. I'm not letting you back in the buggy. Now, the flower and everything else, as far as we're concerned, doesn't matter. That's just the context. Now, here's where we're applying the rule. If I just drive away, like I'm excluding you from my property in the exact same way that I was excluding you from the medicine, that it seems, and I'm driving away here, you're going to die of the sun, and that has nothing to do with me any more than the insulin deprivation was natural, just like the sun is natural. So my question is, again, sorry for being so long-winded here, is that does that sufficiently establish then that actually driving away and leaving the person there is justifiable legally? Or is there a concrete specific thing that fits into our shared understanding of property rights that explains why leaving the person in the desert under those circumstances was not justified? I hope I've made that clear.
I can definitely answer that. So like the conditions before traveling, implicit or otherwise, are what determines if it's legit or not. If the conditions were clearly, yeah, I can drop you off anytime, anywhere, then in normal context, it will be, you'd have to actually say that verbally. The implicit condition is that you'll get back if nothing is like said, like you get back to civilization at the very least. That's my position on that.
Which is kind of what I answered
Yes,
before
I
as
agree.
well, right? Yeah. My answer as well, that you're implicitly agreeing, if you must have the knowledge beforehand that is going to be the case. If you don't have the knowledge beforehand that this person can just drop you off whenever, then this person is obviously doing something on purpose to forestall you from, like, or whatever you want to call it. They can't just exclude you because there was a prior agreement.
It almost sounds like what you're both saying is that if someone drives you out to the desert, this almost implicitly means that they are agreeing to an easement that you have
Yes.
to have access back
Yeah.
out of the desert.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is what I would grant all of these hypotheticals regarding adults. So, in the case of the airplane, if I take a flight to somewhere, I'm in agreement with the pilot, with the flight company or whatever, that I would be landed safely, and I would be landed safely at the location where where we agreed. Um, so, and if this isn't fulfilled, there might be other conditions that might be like, well, we couldn't fly you there because XYZ, so we'll fly you somewhere else, or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? But they couldn't just throw you off. So that's my position, and that's why I think all of these hypotheticals regarding adults is very different from
An adult and a child.
Yeah. So I just don't think it's equivalent, right? Because an adult willingly gets on your car. He willingly gets on that plane. Um, a child doesn't, which is the difference.
So
And
just to be clear, the reason for going to the adult example was not the assumption that these things were equivalent. I definitely don't think they're equivalent either. Rather, my goal here, my stated goal was that we would have the opportunity to more clearly establish the principles that we're going to use to look into the child example, because we needed to have I think a firmer grasp on what the rules are, as I've been referring to them.
Yeah,
Um,
like a base case.
yeah, and now like they're going to discover almost inevitably that there's like something we can't look into in the adult case is the complexities that come along with guardianship as a concept. But the other things are still relevant there. We want to know exactly what those rules are before we use them in some sort of evaluative sense. Doge, there's been much ado about hypotheticals, and much has been said. What do you think? Where are you at now with all of that?
I think, well, first of all, I came here like very spur of the moment. Um, so I wasn't very prepared, but I think that uh, I just don't have a very good defense of guardianship. I will have to um, think about it more. Um, I would like to see G's paper if anyone can send it. Zetetic
Oh yeah,
said,
it's being
yeah.
written. It's taking so long on it. It's written like a preamble to it, but
Oh, okay.
he has
So,
also scattered stuff on Zulu server, but I wouldn't recommend. I mean, it takes a long time to read through. So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I just, I mean, I don't have much to say. Like, I just don't have a
You can
good
split that even
defense for it, I
BC.
guess.
Yeah. Can I
Huh?
ask you a question, Doge, real quick?
Yep.
And if it has any of the arguments I provided you, maybe are you leaning towards my position or are you leaning towards your original position, I guess?
Yes, I'm thinking your position makes much sense. Um,
What do you think about
I just
notification?
struggle. What?
What do you think about notification now?
What do I think? Um,
Like it seemed a bit wishy-washy to me, at least. It seemed like what you're really pointing at is forestalling the child, uh, really there. Like to me, it seems very much like there's this, uh, like a set of unknown people, and they all have this kind of claim to this
yes,
child.
it seems now. It does seem kind of made up. Like it's not actually grounded in much. Um, yeah, I guess I'll just have to rethink my position on this.
Like it would be kind of similar if like I abandon something super valuable, right? Am I like forestalling a set of an egregore of all kinds of people who really want that stuff, you know, by doing that and not telling anyone?
Yeah,
It kind of
yeah,
seems like that.
exactly. Yeah. Um,
Like I know that's Suli's position, but he inherits it from Nai. Uh, but yeah, I know G and Nai has debated this in text a lot.
Well, gentlemen, let me see if I can just. I want to wrap this up before we hit the second hour mark. So I want to see if we can just sort of, I don't know, funnel down from where we were at into the guardianship and just sort of have a discussion on what we think the constitutes, uh, proper guardianship and abandoning guardianship as a responsibility and all that sort of stuff. So I was talking about how we talked about the medicine really quickly, and we talked about how Zern and I agreed that the reason for the exclusion wasn't relevant, and Zatidik pointed out that your reason for doing it is irrelevant, but the context is going to reveal whether or not your sort of like the context that brought you into the situation may have implicitly generated an easement. So the fact you're driving someone out to the desert implicitly creates this sort of easement where, in the same sense as you can't build a donut homestead around someone's house, you have to provide an easement. It's the same kind of, it's an easement in the same sense. So I wonder, do the three of you think then that now that we've sort of got this easement framework, is that sufficient to answer the hypothetical about the child, specifically the hypothetical about the child on the mountain, such that the act of bringing the child up the mountain establishes that you are, each step you take up the mountain, you're sort of implicitly agreeing to an easement to the child to bring them back down the mountain?
I would say
Yeah,
yes.
certainly. Yeah.
And Doge, what do you think about that? We don't have to dwell on it.
You're muted.
Sorry, I went AFK a little bit. The thing is, well, who do you like? Are you in contract with the child himself?
It's more like it comes. The state it comes from is from a state of guardianship, and like you can't just evict someone, right? If you're, it's the same with someone on the plane, right? You can't just evict them to the ocean. You have to evict them to where they want to go or where they came from, right?
Just for the sake of sort of simplifying the thought process here, let's think about this absent the concept of guardianship, because before we get into the guardianship thing, we already showed that if you drive an adult out into the desert, that this was implicitly generating an easement. So can we solve this? Like the question I'm trying to drill into here is, can we solve the problem with the child guardian situation without even appealing to the guardian situation with the guardian concept? Because we already have agreed to a certain framework where taking the child up the mountain, regardless of the guardianship relationship, is implying the generation of an easement.
Sure, like it
Yeah.
was already at the bottom of the bottom of the mountain where he can survive more easily, I suppose. I mean, I think the fundamental is the guardianship, since it is a child.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd say the public easement is the means in which you can facilitate the guardianship appropriately. I think that's what kind of we're pointing at here, is that the easement is the only reason why the easement works with the two adults is because the adult has the capability and to apply himself in some meaningful ways to go ahead and sustain his life. So even if you took the child just down the mountain, right, and then you abandon him there, I mean, there's still a problem there if you didn't pass the guardianship. So the easement is more of like a means in which what is the state of this child and what is the state of an adult. I think that's what Zetik is kind of pointing at
So-
here.
Yeah, so it wouldn't just be getting him back to the city. It would be actually getting back to the city and finding someone who'd take care of him. Like,
Right.
that's the easement.
Well, I hear what you're saying about that, but it seems to me like, for example, that every individual is going to have different parameters about what constitutes violating this implicit easement, right? So if you take somebody out to the desert, but they're a Fremen from Dune, they might not be in the same danger that just like a computer nerd, like one of us, shots
Yeah.
fired, might be in for the desert. And similarly, how far away, like if you're in good shape, you might not be violating the easement if you drop someone off in the desert, but they're within like a reasonable walking distance from the non-desert environment. So I think like what constitutes that easement has to be relative to each person. And if if
Yeah,
if if every easement is relative to the person, then their capacity as a child, just like their physical
Yeah.
capacity, seems to be sufficient without even getting into the guardianship thing, because the mere fact like a child can't survive on the mountain the same way that a mountain man might be able to, regardless of like, because let's just say the same child is sufficiently like, Rothbard would say like a 7-year-old can run away from home if they think that they, if they have sufficiently uh agent oriented mental capacity, right? So it seems to me still that we're able to sort of answer this question without getting to guardianship, because with the hypothetical A, you could you get the same answer whether it's a child or not, that
Yep.
you are basically violating an easement agreement by bringing them to somewhere that they can't survive being abandoned. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
I see what you're saying. So you're saying
It's not
that
an agreement
basically,
with the child necessarily, though.
well, I think he's saying that more like you don't even need to consider step B because you already violated step A. Then you can't logically go to step B anyway because you violated step A. I think that's what he's trying to say here.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, which is fine. I think that's fine to say. I think obviously if you violate step A, then you're already in the wrong, and you shouldn't be doing that from the get go. So you already like nullify the scenario of what's happening. So you wouldn't even need to look for scenario B where you find another guardian.
Right. It seems to me that the violation, like what you're calling step A and step B there, it seems that the violation of step B implies the violation of step A almost. So it seems like necessarily the case that guardianship might not even be like a relevant consideration, at least for the hypotheticals that we're faced with here. And then I guess I want to put this back to you, Zern, because you've got the most pressing concern with the abortion topic separately. Is if we have a sufficiently developed sense of what constitutes an implicit easement in property rights, then is it possible, from your view, that that theory will be successful in establishing like when abortion is or isn't permissible?
Yeah, so I would use the word eviction because abortion implies a termination of the life. But so the eviction, then yes, then I would say as long as you provide like, which I think the easement would be potentially like the 9 months of gestation or until viability, depending on the technology, however you want to look at it. Um, if the let's say in the current technology is 24 weeks, right? Uh, you would need to maintain that easement, right, from the get go, unless until B is satisfied at some point. So you couldn't do anything from point A because you said like B implies A.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really interesting to me. I didn't expect to get here. Um so it's and I'm kind of convinced of this, at least provisionally right now, that if like for my own purposes to develop a sufficiently rigorous understanding of what such an implicit easement could look like if such a thing were valid in the first place, like let's just assume it is for a moment, that would answer all these questions that guardianship is sort of intended to answer. It seems like guardianship, at least as far as I can tell in this conversation, might be a confounding factor that's actually not adding any clarity, but it's actually confusing things more, because all of these situations are already sufficiently dealt with and more immediately dealt with by just understanding the implicit easements that people have as actors.
That is kind of
um,
interesting, I guess, to say that
I
maybe
would
guardianship.
disagree.
Yeah,
I
maybe I'm
think
not. See, okay, sorry, go.
uh, I think well, in terms of like aggressing against a child, maybe you're right, but the reason why guardianship is important is the question of like, well, what happens if I'm perfectly fine taking care of my child, we have a happy relationship, and suddenly this other guy comes in and he's like, actually, I really like your child. I want to take care of him. I think maybe you want to take him to one school, and he's like, oh, no, 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 no. I actually think it would be better if you went to this other school. Who gets to decide? Right. So that's what guardianship actually
Yeah.
tries to solve.
That so you're saying, I'm understanding correctly that you're saying guardianship is a useful concept. It's just useful for answering a different category of questions than the ones that these hypotheticals have been getting at.
Yes, maybe. I mean,
They're correlated in a sense of that, like what is best for the child, right? And that you're not.
yeah,
So I think what's best for the child, obviously, in the occasion of like evictionism or whatever it is to maintain that life uh, with maybe this easement foundation that we kind of created here, or framework. I think there might be like a Venn diagram here where there's a little bit of overlap, but both don't necessarily cover each other entirely.
It
I
seems to me that the easement situation is primary in any case where what we're specifically concerned with situations where the person in question is going to die. So when you're asking of a question of like there's two parents trying to decide which school to send somebody they have guardianship over, then it's not about death. Like death represents, I think, to us for some kind of objective, logically relevant element where if the alternative is death, that's different than just comparing two non-deadly alternatives. And
That sounds
so
right.
yeah, so if that is the case, it seems that guardianship is being utilized to answer the age-old question of if you have two people who own something and they can't agree, then it sort of we can get into, well, only one person can have guardianship, and guardianship is giving this person the authorization to make decisions about what school they go to, or if they go to the coal mines instead of going to school, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But then
And in
if
the Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, if that's the case, it seems like first there's our theory of property rights, and inside of that theory of property rights, where it's discriminating between permissible and impermissible acts, then secondary, you've got this sort of condition where only things that don't violate these implicit easements are permissible. So you can think of it like circles that are getting smaller, and maybe I can use, maybe I should draw it out. Maybe that'd be, so you got this circle. These are all the things that are permissible in our, theory of property rights. And then you've got another circle. These are all the things that don't violate easements in sort of um, uh, our theory of property rights. And then it's in everything that happens within guardianship. So we'll put one more here. This is guardianship. Everything that happens in guardianship has to happen within those other ones first. So, like, you can always send somebody to a school unless you're sending them to a school that's just a big meat grinder that eats them. You know what I mean? So it seems like that's the sort of flow here, the logical connection between everything. Is that making sense?
Feels right, at least.
yeah. Yeah, again, I would say, well, what if two people want to have guardianship over the same child? Well, where does this fit into this Venn
It has
diagram?
property rights over the guardianship title. Yeah.
Yes,
That's
I
my-
agree
yeah.
with Zatetic.
But then there's also like this issue with what grounds the justification of like the mother has to care for the child as long as she's like trying to live, right? That is the case that it comes from a state of guardianship. That is its natural state. Yeah, it doesn't come from a state of death. So you can't just evict it to death. I think that's my position there. So,
Yeah, I mean, I understand. What if two people have a dispute over who gets guardianship? I guess the argument, I mean, you could take this to court and adjudicate it and say, well, I can provide this child with a better care, etc., etc. But I guess you would have to argue that the other person is not providing adequate care and that they should relinquish their right over the guardianship. I think because you're the one who's making the positive claim here, that you're saying that, well, this person is not sufficient and doing his guardianship job.
I think that can get quite autistic and annoying. If this, we can give them, I don't know.
Well, but you would still have it, right?
Because you refused this specific vaccine, and it's has slightly less risk of death. Whatever.
Sure, I don't know if it needs to. I don't know what that would be exactly of like what the metrics are, and I do feel like that's a little bit dirty. I would say.
I think the solution is the Venn diagram, though, right? Like, well, this
That's
is the
true.
Venn diagram. Like, because what I would say is,
I understand it. Like, if you're if you're acting around a child, like trying to protecting and whatever, and you're not acting as a guardian, then you are aggressing.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure like the diagram follows there. Since like
well, no.
outside
So
the
what I'm saying
guardianship,
is,
it's
what I'm
not
answering
aggressive.
specifically is the idea that, and what I was hearing there, that there's some sort of tension about who can be the guardian. What if one person is not being as good a guardian as someone else? And what I would say is that guardianship has to make sense within the first comer principle. So once you're the guardian, you can't. There is no discussion about like, well, I'm going to put this to better use. I'm going to be a more effective steward over this. That's not what property rights is about. So I'd say whoever it is, but the caveat is if you do something aggressive within that guardianship, you invalidate it. And if you do something that's not aggressive but violates their implicit easements, then that also in the same way violates the guardianship. And those are the ways that
That would be
guardianship can
aggressive.
come to an end.
I would disagree that it's non-aggressive.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you would want to conflate efficiency as an act of aggression. Like, if you're less efficient, is that an act of aggression? I think I agree with Gallows
No, I
here.
think you have to just be good enough. You have to make sure the child gets enough food, and it's not just
the bare minimum requirement is that you would grow up into an adult.
There's probably more requirements than that too. But
I think that getting access to the sustenance you need to survive is covered by the easement, like the entire concept of an easement, though, right? Because if we're looking at being dropped off on a mountain or a desert or wherever, or even in the inner city, what is it that poses a risk to you in all of these would be something that ultimately is going to reduce down to your inability to receive the sustenance you need, receive the medical attention you need, or whatever. So I think that it's still the same thing to say, if you need to provide a child with food, that's the same, that's covered by the easement. It's not that it's aggressive to not give them food. It's that the child has an easement implicitly to have access to the food, and you're denying them that.
Well, it's that you're acting as a guardian already, but you're like neglecting the guardianship. I'd say like that's the contradictory latecomer action. I don't know. Well,
why don't we do this? To wrap this up, I'll give everybody some last words, but I want to identify specifically some concrete resolutions that might be useful for other discussions. So, like for me, my contribution would be, what exactly is an easement? And also what exactly establishes an easement, and is there such a thing as an implicit easement? So those are the questions I'm interested in. I would like to hear if you guys have any thoughts about, like, we've had this conversation for 2 hours now. What are some of the things that we didn't resolve that we should get really specific about if we do this again, or if another conversation with different people follows in our footsteps?
does an easement satisfy the requirements of guardianship?
Yeah, I'll definitely like to see more on that. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So can we rephrase, or not rephrase it, but elaborate? Like, are you asking, do you have an easement to sustenance as a ward? Is that like kind of getting at this, what the question's?
Yeah, right. Because I guess the contention here is that guardianship implies some type of care that you need to provide, and does this easement satisfy that care? Right. I think that would be fine. Like sustenance would be one type of care, right? Or housing, or whatever it is that, as
I
long as
think
it's
it's just
not.
you could just say guarding the child.
Oh, okay, yes, or garden.
Is the
Yeah, because
question like, does
entails
easement
everything.
complete? The question is like, is guardianship completely like within easements?
That goes up to your diagram, right? Is this diagram, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
valid?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Mm,
What we're trying to talk about is a law, right? So if you're violating guardianship, you're necessarily being aggressive, or you're violating easement, you're necessarily being aggressive. I don't think it's meaningful to say, yeah, you're violating guardianship or whatever, but you're not really
Mm.
being aggressive. So then it's not even a legal question.
Yeah, within the context of, I guess you can add on top, legal context, because we're asking
mm,
what you are required to do, right? We're trying to prescribe some certain action, I guess, and what you're allowed or
yeah.
not allowed to do.
Yeah.
So that sort of raises a couple other
Yeah.
questions, I think.
Ooh, this was kind of productive. I like this.
Yeah.
First time
Yes,
I've ever had an argument that was productive.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, it's not a shouting match. I'm interrupting a bit, but I have ADHD, so yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
wouldn't worry about it. No, nobody
I
here was
mean,
particularly rambunctious.
yeah. No, that's what I noticed with um, like people who are actually interested in reason, in liberty. Um, Debating with people like that is actually very enjoyable and very productive. And when I debate communists and stuff like that, they're complete idiots. They are not interested in thinking. They're not interested in truth. They're just interested in uh, uh, convincing you with their ideology. It's insufferable. It's super unproductive.
Yeah, they want you to drink the
Uh,
Kool-Aid, you know?
And that's
yeah,
why I think I try to not even frame these as debates either, because it's just such a it's debate. I think for a lot of people invokes a format where there's aggression and posturing and stuff like that, and it's just a lot more enjoyable to be rid of all that.
yeah. Well,
I
thank
like both.
Oxford
I
for
like
that.
both. There's different. I mean, it's debate is very good for like entertainment, uh, and it's a good sport.
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah,
where we like develop shit, you know.
So
yeah,
let me
yes.
say, this was really good. I think what we should do now is, if nobody else has any other questions that they think they want to add to this list here, what I'll do is I'll just go through the list, give everybody a last word, and I'll end the recording, and then you guys can take it over to the Discord server voice chat if you want to continue. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okie dokie.
Sure.
All right, so um, I'm gonna do it like this. Zatidik, you go first. Last word. Try to keep it under 5 minutes if you can.
Okay. It was fun, yeah, and yeah, I think it's. I don't know what more to say. I mean, I've said You said we're going to. I don't know. Yeah, it was fun. That's what I'm gonna say.
Very good. And next, Doge.
Yeah, so I think I kind of gave my final word already, but um, I'm just kind of like thinking through all of this in the middle of the debate, which is why I kind of went silent as well. Um, so I had an idea of guardianship, which I held to be true, and um, I don't know. I guess I have never put it up to sufficient scrutiny. And now I will have to rethink. I am already rethinking my position. I'm kind of leaning towards I was wrong, and I'm kind of held like a floating uh, um, position which I couldn't even prove. Um, so yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think I want to say I have so much respect for everybody and anybody who can introspect. And like you guys were saying, it's so much better to be having conversations with people who can. Zern, the last word, the last word is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate that joining here and having people talk to me about this because this has been bugging me. But I would say that um, there's some things that I definitely need to consider about what are the conclusions of what my position was. I do have a fear that my position might lead to something like positive rights. So I need to make sure that I scrutinize it because I disagree with positive rights from the get go. So I just want to make sure that I'm not advocating for something that I actually don't believe in. But so far, Doge has provided me some things. Galazar, you too, you provided me some hypotheticals where there's a little bit of a concern of what the right choice is here. But I feel like I definitely made some movement on this, at least in my heart.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like it was a really productive conversation. I certainly felt that it was really productive for my own understanding of everything, and I'm very interested in because I've heard the word easement before. It comes up a lot when like we talk about donut homesteads or we talk about things like roads, and I've always been cruising on having just a sufficiently familiar understanding of easements, but now seeing the role that they could play in a more, I don't know, a stronger, more rigorous understanding of the property rights theory that we're all promoting, I'm really interested to go and learn a lot more about easements and then come back and see if that enables me to sort of address the hypotheticals better. That'll be a good standard for me. Anyhow, that's 2 hours. We'll leave it there. I'm going to end the recording. When I end the recording, it's going to play the outro. It's going to kick you all out. So you guys can just go to the voice chat if you wish, and I'll see you all later. Thanks so much for participating in this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.